It was just another long shift at the diner for Lisa, a hardworking waitress who always treated customers with kindness, whether they could afford a meal or not. When a homeless man walked in, shivering and hungry, she didn't hesitate. She brought him a warm plate of food, knowing full well she might get in trouble. But she never expected what happened next. Just 30 minutes later, her manager found out and fired her on the spot. No warnings, no second chances, just a cold dismissal for showing compassion. Heartbroken and unsure of what to do next, Lisa stepped outside, the reality of her situation sinking in. But then, as if fate had been watching, a stranger walked through the door. A man with a presence that changed everything. Who was he? And what happened next? Stay with me as this unbelievable true story unfolds. You won't believe how it ends. Lisa stood outside the diner, her mind racing. Just minutes ago, she had a job, a way to pay rent, a sense of security. Now she had nothing, all because she chose kindness over rules. She glanced back through the window, watching as the homeless man she had helped finished his meal, unaware of the cost she had just paid. Then the door swung open. A tall man in a dark coat stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. He wasn't a regular. His presence felt different, important, though Lisa couldn't quite explain why. The manager straightened up, suddenly nervous, as the man approached the counter. Lisa wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Who was he? And why did it feel like he had arrived at just the right moment? She had no idea that what happened next would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone in that diner. Lisa hesitated, watching through the glass as the man spoke to her former manager. His voice was calm but firm, and the way he carried himself demanded attention. The manager, who had so easily fired her moments ago, suddenly looked uncomfortable, shifting on his feet. Lisa couldn't hear what they were saying, but something about the conversation felt important. Meanwhile, the homeless man, still unaware of what had happened, finished his meal, wiping his mouth with gratitude. He looked around as if searching for Lisa, but she was no longer inside. Her kindness had given him a moment of dignity, but it had cost her everything. Outside, Lisa's hands trembled as she hugged her coat tighter around her. She had no backup plan, no idea what to do next. But before she could even take a step away, the diner door swung open again. The man in the dark coat was now looking straight at her. Lisa froze as the man stepped toward her. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that made her heart race. Was he about to scold her like the manager had? Offer her a job? She had no idea, but she could feel that whatever was coming next would change everything. The cold wind bit at her skin as he stopped just a few feet away. "Are you the one who helped that man?" His voice was steady, not accusing, just curious. Lisa nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. Inside the diner, the manager stood stiffly, watching through the window, his face pale. Something about this man unsettled him. He had dismissed Lisa without a second thought, but now, with this stranger involved, he suddenly looked like he regretted it. The homeless man finally noticed what was happening outside and stood up, his eyes widening. He recognized the man. And that's when Lisa realized this was no ordinary stranger. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she looked between the homeless man and the stranger. There was recognition in his eyes, shock, even, but also something deeper, something unspoken. The man in the dark coat turned his gaze toward him, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. The homeless man took a shaky step forward. "It's you," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the street noise. Lisa frowned, confused. How did they know each other? Inside the diner, the manager was still watching, his hands gripping the counter. His nervousness had shifted to something closer to fear. Lisa didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel the weight of something much bigger than her job loss settling over the moment. Then the stranger turned back to Lisa. "You didn't just help a homeless man," he said quietly. "You helped the wrong person, or maybe the right one." Lisa's heart pounded as she tried to make sense of the man's words. The homeless man, now standing just a few feet away, looked shaken. His eyes darted between Lisa and the stranger, searching for something, an answer, a way out. Then the stranger spoke again, his voice steady but charged with meaning. "He's not just any homeless man," he said, nodding toward him. "He's someone people have been looking for. And you just saved his life." Lisa's breath hitched. The homeless man's face tightened, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of a secret had finally caught up with him. "I never meant for things to go this way," he murmured. "I was just trying to disappear." The diner door suddenly swung open. The manager stepped outside, his expression unreadable. But before he could say a word, the stranger turned to him. "You fired her for doing the right thing," he said. "But today, that mistake might cost you more than you realize." Lisa glanced at the homeless man, then back at the stranger. Something big was unfolding right in front of her, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. But then the stranger reached into his pocket, pulling out a small card. He handed it to Lisa. "Come with me," he said. "You have no idea what you've just walked into." Lisa stared at the card, her pulse racing. One moment of kindness had changed everything. But as she looked up at the two men before her, she realized this was only the beginning. Lisa hesitated, the small card burning in her hand. She glanced at the stranger, then at the homeless man. No, not just any man. Someone important, someone who had been lost, but was now found. She didn't know the full story, but she knew one thing. Her kindness had set something in motion that couldn't be undone. The manager shifted uncomfortably. He had fired her so easily, never expecting this moment to unfold. Now he looked like he regretted it. I didn't know," he muttered, but no one was listening anymore. The homeless man met Lisa's eyes and gave her a small, grateful nod before turning to the stranger. "It's time, isn't it?" he asked. The stranger nodded. "Yes, and she's coming with us." Lisa took a deep breath. She had lost her job, but somehow she had found something greater, a new path, a new purpose. And with that, she stepped forward.